Any others? No. Item 4 is the minutes of the meeting on the 15th of October 2024. Minutes can be found on page 3 of your agendas. Could I have a proposal, I suppose, is the right thing, if you're all happy with them? Councillor Mood.
Be happy to propose, Chair.
Okay. Do you have a seconder on those minutes? Councillor McNally, yes?
I'd be happy to be second on that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Are we all agreed? Good, and they're agreed. Thank you very much. And at this point, we stop for a moment because unfortunately we're having an IT problem. So please bear with us, talk amongst yourselves and all that stuff. As soon as the presentations are available, we'll start again. So we'll just stop for a little while, but thank you. Okay, thank you, everybody. Thanks for your patience while we got that sorted out. Okay, we'll move on then to item 5, which is development control and enforcement matters. Item 5.1 is a confirmation of a TPO 8, the Leys, Longthorpe in Peterborough. And I'll pass you over to Stephen Chesney-Beals to introduce the item.
Thank you, Chair. We're here today to consider the confirmation of TPO number 5 of 2004. TPO was made and served on the 13th of June on an individual yew tree to protect it because the tree was considered to be under threat by way of a Section 211 notice to fell the tree. The TPO has been the subject of consultation and because objections have been received, the committee are required to consider the objections before determining the confirmation of the TPO in accordance with para 2.6.2.2 of the Council's Constitution. The main considerations are: is the U worthy of a TPO in terms of its public visual amenity value? Is the making of the TPO reasonable, justified, having regard to the objections raised? The tree is located in a grassed area outside the front of number 8, the Leys, immediately adjacent to the front boundary wall to the property, as you can see on the TPO plan there. So it sits just outside the low front stone wall to the front of the property. The UT1 is considered to be an early mature specimen, typical of the species, and appears to be in a good physiological and structural condition with no apparent health problems or structural defects. Objections have been received by 2 individuals. I consider the main points of the objection to be the yew tree's toxicity. Yes, I agree that obviously the berries, the seed, or the leaves, if eaten and digested, can be toxic, but believe that any person or animal would become noticeably unwell after consuming the leaves and seeds in any quantity, which is understood to be a rare occurrence. I fully understand and appreciate the concerns with regard to the worry and anxiety of the toxicity of the yew, and especially its berries and leaves. However, I believe the risk to be low. I consider that children, vulnerable adults and pets would ordinarily be closely supervised in an area outside the front of the house with open access and in adjacent to the public realm. So can we just go back to the original slide with the position of the tree there, and it will show you. Sorry, yeah. So if we see where the T1 is, that's a footpath. It's a public footpath that runs through from Melford Close through adjacent to the properties there in the Leys, and then comes out onto the Thorpe Road. So it's adjacent to the public realm, and that anyone supervising would be in a position not to allow the consumption of quantities of berries or leaves unchallenged. The other objection, blocking of light all year round. Appreciate the tree will block some light from the rooms at the front of the house, but I do not consider that protected yew should be felled to facilitate greater light to the rooms, but pruned and managed to increase the light availability to the rooms in question, as it has been in the past. There was an issue about the surrounding trees and the fact that there were other trees in close proximity to the trees. And if we look at the plan there, we can see just to the left of T1, adjacent to where it says the Leys, that's a piece of public open space owned and managed by Peterborough City Council with a number of trees on it. I consider the loss of the protected yew would be a major deficit from its ecological perspective, given that most of the surrounding trees are deciduous. So all of the other trees in that open area are deciduous, as the yew is an evergreen native tree and provides greater ecological value and offers some biodiversity to the area, especially as a dense canopy provides a valuable site for nesting and roosting birds early in the nesting season, and a valuable food source. Another point of objection, risk to the wall, as we said, immediately adjacent to that circle underneath T1 is a low stone wall. I appreciate the concerns with regard to the wall and the risk of the future damage by the protected yew. However, the wall currently appears to show no signs of damage, and should any damage become evident in the future, the situation can be reviewed and appropriate action taken. So we can see there that the wall is very close to the tree. And there may be issues in the future. I acknowledge that the protected yew has been pruned in the past to retain its attractive crown habit. However, I'm not aware of the reasons for this approach, and agree that the yew looks. And I don't agree that the yew looks out of keeping. To the contrary, I consider the yew contributes to the character and the appearance of the Longthorpe Conservation Area. And and welcome the past traditional practice of topiary, because the tree, as you can see, has been regularly pruned and managed to attain that very symmetrical shape that it has. That ordinarily wouldn't be its natural crown shape. And in direct contrast to those trees that are in that open area, which are more naturally grown specimens with natural crown habits. The second objector raised pretty much the same concerns about the lack of light and also the toxicity of the berries or the yew in terms of its berries in particular. And that is the property owner of the property that you can just see off to the right underneath the yew there. So the obstruction of light to that particular property is nowhere near as great as obviously number 8. And again, I think the same can be said for supervising, in this case, grandchildren that might be playing outside the front of the property, which is immediately adjacent to a public footpath and the public realm. So that's my response to the objection, and that's as much as I have to say, Chair.
Okay. Thank you, Stephen, for your report. Okay, committee, we have one person registered to speak on this item. Please, can I therefore ask Michael King, please, to come to the table there. Good afternoon, Mr. King, and welcome. You'll have 5 minutes when you start speaking to address committee. Remain in your seat afterwards because there may be some questions for you. When there's 30 seconds to go, Democratic Services Officer will let you know. Okay, so just press the speak button or the bottom button there when you're ready.
Thank you very much. Is that working? Yeah, sounds like it. Good afternoon, Chair, committee members, councillors. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to address the proposed tree preservation order for the yew tree located on my property. While I deeply respect the intention behind the order and appreciate the value that trees bring to our environment, I must urge you to reconsider the decision based on a number of significant and I believe reasonable concerns. First, let me start by addressing the issue of safety. The yew tree in question is not only of significant presence in terms of its size and growth, but also poses a unique risk due to its nature. Yew trees are highly toxic. While the tree itself may be well tended and not prone to sudden issues, the presence of poisonous needles, bark, and berry seeds is a serious consideration, especially for families. My wife and I are currently planning on starting a family and getting a dog, and the potential danger posed by the toxic berries is a significant concern. If we were to have a child, there would be an increased risk of accidental ingestion, which could be life-threatening. This risk cannot be understated, and it's a vital reason to question the preservation of this particular tree so close to our home. Second, the tree's location presents considerable implications for our house's structural integrity. A British standard calculation for the root protection area has shown that the roots of the tree are most likely extending underneath our property. This is a critical concern, as roots that infiltrate the foundation of a house can lead to structural damage over time. Cracks in the walls, shifts in the foundation, and even potential subsidence could result from these encroaching roots. These types of structural issues can be expensive to repair and could compromise the safety and stability of the property. Adding to these points, the tree's proximity has an undeniable effect on the natural light reaching our home. The yew's dense branches block out significant amounts of sunlight all year round, making rooms darker and reducing the amount of light that enters our living spaces. This lack of sunlight can negatively impact our quality of life and, in the long term, contribute to problems such as damp and mold growth. A home that doesn't receive enough natural light is more prone to moisture retention and can create a breeding ground for mold, posing potential health risks, especially for my wife, who has asthma and bronchiectasis. In the interest of fairness and ensuring that my concerns are both reasonable and well-founded, I've consulted with an experienced arboriculturalist. Their professional assessment supports my position that the tree's preservation is not in the best interest of my property or my family. Additionally, to demonstrate that my concerns are not isolated, I have spoken to all of the neighbours in the close about this issue. They have all expressed their understanding of my position, and importantly, none of them object to my request for the rejection of the tree preservation order. And I have a signed document here if anyone wants to see it to support that. The financial implications linked to the management obligation of the tree are also not to be overlooked. The tree cannot be reasonably retained in its current location without regular maintenance. This means that it doesn't fit into the space where it can naturally grow and therefore causes 3 issues. Firstly, the repeated obligation we will have to keep making applications to prune the tree. Secondly, the bureaucratic burden on the council to keep processing these applications. And thirdly, the financial implications on me to repeat the work just to make an unsuited tree fit in the space that the tree is shoehorned into. The location of the tree right over the drive and the front door introduces an added burden with the berries that drop on any car that's parked on the drive. Berries that have started to damage the paintwork on our cars and are often walked inside the house when walked upon and stain the carpet. In conclusion, while I fully support the environmental conservation and benefits of preserving trees that contribute positively to our community, this particular yew tree's location presents too many risks to be justified as a protected asset. The toxic nature of it, the potential structural damage due to its roots, the adverse impact on sunlight, and the associated financial concerns all strongly indicate to me that the preservation order should not be accepted in this case. I respectfully ask that the committee take these points into serious consideration. Thank you very much for your time and attention.
Thank you, Mr. King. Members, do you have any questions, please, Mr. King? Yeah, Councillor Rush, then Councillor Atkins.
Thank you, Chair. Have you ever pruned the tree yourself?
We haven't. Is that working? Yeah, sorry, no, we haven't. No.
Councillor Antu.
Thank you, Chair. Have you ever cleaned moss from your roof, or do you know whether your neighbour has?
We haven't. We've been in there just over a year, and I don't know whether our neighbour has either. I'm sorry.
In the photograph we have there, did you plant the shrub in front of your window?
No, that was there when we moved in.
That was there. Third question I would like very quickly is that are you aware if the tree roots are under, you believe the tree roots to be under your foundations, if you remove the tree, there's something called ground heave, which actually might cause damage to your foundations if you take the tree away. You understand that, yes?
I understand that. I'm not an expert in that. I've used the British Standard root protection area calculation, and I'm going off guidance from the arboriculturalist I mentioned.
Okay, that's fine. You are aware. That's fine. Thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Anybody else? We'll get through the questions. Yep. Councillor Skipstead.
Thank you, Chair. I was just going to ask, how long have you lived there, and if you've experienced any of the problems that you were referring to regarding the tree root damage, and also did you mention the damp inside your house? So how long have you lived there, and have you experienced any of those issues so far? Thank you.
Yeah, so we moved in November last year, so just over is that coming through? Yeah, we've lived there just over a year. We haven't seen any problems due to the roots, any structural issues yet, so fingers crossed that stays the case. And regarding mould, the window that is directly behind it that's most affected does get cold, and I guess we've seen spots of mould or whatever it is on the wall in that room.
I'm just going to bring Stephen back in. He wants to add some information.
Thank you, Chair, through you. Sorry, I'd just like to put Mr. King's mind at rest. We all consider, and I think you do also, that this tree was existing when the property was built. The building control measures would have dictated that your foundations would have been to a depth to accommodate the presence of that tree and its future size. So NHBC 4.2 would dictate the depth of the foundation on the type of soil. So it's unlikely that you would experience problems to the fabric of the building itself. Now, that doesn't discount the fact there might well be damage, as I've alluded to, in terms of the wall and maybe even the block paving. But I do want to just allay your fears that it's unlikely that there would be any damage to the fabric of the building. And I'm sure maybe you probably had a survey before you bought the house. But yeah, just put your mind at rest.
Yeah, no, that was raised to us on the survey. It was more the proximity of the tree in case it were to fall that was really raised as a risk. The only thing I would say to that is that our neighbour has had roots in her sewage pipes that I would, again, like to have thought was considered at the time of building the house, but clearly has become an issue since. But we haven't, just to clarify, we haven't had those issues yet, but neighbour has.
Thank you. Any further questions from? No. Thanks, sir. Thank you very much for your time. If you'd like to return back to your seat. Okay, committee, questions for officers regarding this? Any clarities you need about what's been said or what's in the reports? Councillor Mahmood.
Thank you, Chair, and through you. I think for me is I just have a couple of questions regarding the light issue to the property. Obviously, yeah, I acknowledge, this is quite a big tree, but you can look from the pictures 1 and 2. It's completely surrounding that window. So yeah, no, I just want to clarify the position on the light, if you could, please.
I'm sorry, we don't have those photographs to show you, but they are in the report. But yes, there's a distance between the canopy. It's not quite clear here, but certainly there is a distance between the canopy of the tree as it is presently managed and the front bedroom window. And there's nothing to stop anybody using the bedroom as an office. But I think there is enough. There's enough light there for that room. Personally, I deal with a lot of applications where there's issues over light, and I don't think that's unreasonable. But that's my view. But certainly, I think if the tree and the size was maintained, then I don't think there would be that much of an issue.
Thank you. Councillor Rush.
Thank you, Chair. The tree is on council land with branches growing over onto the property, over to the property of number 8. Whose responsibility is it to prune the tree to keep it in a reasonable state? And as the occupier of number 8 got the authority to cut the branches off the tree that overhang his property?
Through you, Chair. Sorry. Are we talking about the yew tree? No, the yew tree is Mr. King's. It sits on his property. That strip of grass adjacent to the stone wall on where the tree is located is Mr. King's property. So it's his tree. No, that's okay.
Any further questions at all for officers on this? Yes, Councillor Ramsey.
Thank you, Chair. You've mentioned that it will need pruning every now and again. And how often does that need pruning, and would he need to make an application every time he needs to cut it down?
Forgive me. Sorry, Chair. Can you repeat that, please, Councillor? I missed that.
It's just about managing the tree over the years. It said it has been pruned in past. How often would he need to do that, and what would be the process of him being allowed to do the pruning?
The obligation for any tree owner in a conservation area is to give 6 weeks' notice. And notice, once it's given, we can agree to repeated works. So often I would encourage somebody in a situation where if you wanted to manage this tree in that size, because again, I'm not exactly sure when this tree was last pruned, but it's not growing rapidly. But obviously it is growing, and it needs to be, if it were to be kept to that size, it would need to be pruned on a 3 or 5 year cycle. So that could be agreed to until such time as the owner wanted to change that regime of pruning, or the tree were to decline in health and there be a request to do something more drastic.
Okay. Thank you. Any further questions before we move on? No? Okay, we'll move on to debate then. Who would like to kick that off? Councillor Bond.
Thank you, Chair. So for me, I'm tending to lead with the objectors case. For me, it seems like you've got the health issues of the berries and the leaves and the needles, etc. He says he's going to start a young family, perhaps get a dog. It's unfortunate we haven't got any other neighbours here to say if they've got, say, cats or anything like that which have been affected in the past. Yeah, so for me, I'm leaning that way. I also appreciate the light issue. Perhaps the photo could be deceiving, but for me, sitting here, it does seem very overbearing into that top window, especially. And I'm also conscious of the fact that, albeit it is a different type of tree compared to the ones across the road, it does look like there seems to be a good coverage of trees down that street. And as he says, no one else down the street has a problem with it. So for me, I'm probably going to go against the TPO on this case.
Councillor Bond. Anybody else? Councillor Mahmood.
Thank you, Chair. Through you, I am of the similar view as Councillor Bond. I think for me, I truly feel that from what I can see from the pictures, that the tree is quite overbearing, especially within the house. And I think certainly that it does present some sort of light issues. So yeah, in this instance, I think so far, I think I will be going against confirming this TPO, but I'm open-minded to whatever the debate develops.
Anybody else? Councillor Fitzgerald.
Got the gremlins in again. This is an area I know well. It's in my ward. And it's plain for anybody to see. Two members have already used the word I would describe it as overbearing. It's a very nice tree. Unfortunately, it should be in the bit of land just to the right of it, where it would grow to its heart's content. And I know this tree may have been there a long while, but it can't be that long. And if we talk about potential for damage, why are we waiting? It clearly is not suitable in that location. You can see that. So I didn't need to see this. I know it well. The interesting thing is, it's only when the applicant made the intention clear to fell it that we decided we might TPO it rather than the other way around. So I would be supporting the applicant, not because he's in my ward, because I think it's because in actual fact I told him I couldn't represent him because until I saw the report and got the facts, and the facts are for me very clear. We shouldn't approve the TPO on this, and I think we should allow the applicant to remove the tree and keep his house in good order for that and all the other reasons he said. And I think he's got the support of the rest of the residents in the street as well. He did say he had a document, which if we want to look at it, we can do. Even though it's a very nice tree. And it's in isolation, though, a little bit, to be fair. And it should have been taken out when the house was built. That's my take on it, Chair.
Anybody else? Councillor Ranjab.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I'm of a kind of similar view as well, that especially when it comes to kids, is berries and leaves could be poisonous. And often we see there are families that they don't only have one child, they might have 2 or 3 children walking down the path. And then if it is poisonous, then that could be hazardous as well. And after we talk about the light as well, when it comes to planning issues, I think it is too close and it is a hazard as well for children. Yes, we should care about the environment, but firstly, those who are living very close by.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Skibsted.
Thank you, Chair. I'm on an opposite viewpoint. I believe that the tree officer has outlined his reasons for keeping this tree protection order, and I believe we should take account of his knowledge on this one. Also, I understand the concerns of the resident, but the tree was there when he bought the house last year, so I'm sort of assuming that that came along with the package of buying the house. So I think that the tree protection order should be in place. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else? Okay. Yes, Councillor Rush.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, having visited the site on Friday, I think it's very overbearing to the property. It's blocking out lights. It's in the wrong place. You know, the house should never have been built there with that tree in situ. I think it's like Councillor Fitzgerald said. You know, it's in the wrong place. So I'm minded to go against the TPO.
Councillor Fitzgerald.
Just one point, Chair, which I didn't mention, but it's come up, and Councillor Skipstead has prompted my remark. It put it back in my head, and the problem is that the tree officer's opinion is opinion. It's his view, and it's a subjective. Oh, we seem to have Radio 4 coming in. So the subjectivity of the issue is what the disagreement will be about. So I'm quite happy that our officer thinks it's great, and I think it's a very nice tree. You know, we all might agree it's a lovely tree. The subjective bits are the bits that we will seem to be agreeing on in terms of this consensus, I think. I've not heard anybody disagree that it's in the wrong place, but it's still a very nice tree.
Anyone else? Just for a bit of clarity, Councillor Fitzgerald mentioned this about when the TPO is served. Those of you who've been in the training earlier today will know that this is a conservation area. So exactly. So you'll know that the resident had to tell the council they were intending or wanting, and that's why the TPO is served. It's not the TPO. You know, we don't go around effectively putting TPOs on everything normally until they become noticed of and the danger comes in, which is where our officer gets involved. Okay. Anybody else got anything? No. Tough one, isn't it? Pluses and minus both ways. So I think we'll let that go that way. And I'm going to ask for a proposal, please. Anybody got one? Councillor Mahmood?
Thank you, Chair. Through you, yeah, no, I propose that we don't confirm this TPO, and it's not in the right location for a TPO. So yeah, that is my proposal.
Did you get that?
So, just to clarify, Councillor Murray, you're proposing that the TPO be not confirmed.
That's right. Yeah.
Thank you.
Seconder, please. Councillor Bond seconding that? Yes. Okay, so we've got a proposal, we've got a seconder, so we'll go to the vote. Please remember to use your cards. So all those in favour of Councillor Mahmood's proposal not to allow the TPO. 2, 8. 8 against.
1, 2, 3. So that's 8, 4, 3 against.
Okay.
Passes.
Okay, so that's 8 for and 3 against. So the TPO is not allowed and the motion passes. Thank you very much. Okay, thanks, Stephen, for your time. Thank you. Excuse me, Chair. Wait a minute, just got to log back in. Councillor Skipstead has already made her way before I had a chance. Are you ready to go? Tell me when you're ready. All ready to go? Okay. We'll move now on to item 5.2, which is Tollbar House on Shrewsbury Avenue. The report can be found on pages 33 of your agenda pack. Please can I ask then Connor to introduce the item when you're ready, Connor. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Chair, and afternoon members. So before you today is Tollbar House. So the proposals for 2 3-bedroom dwelling houses with parking area. and it's been called in on the grounds of impacts to neighbour amenity and then highway matters in terms of safety. So the application site itself is located down Shrewsbury Avenue, and it's situated just south of Oundle Road. The application site comprises of a parcel of land to the rear of Tollbar House, so it's etched in the red line on the right-hand side picture. And it's accessed off Shrewsbury Avenue as well, so direct access behind Tollbar House. It should also be noted about Tollbar House itself was formerly an office building, and then it was converted to 10 residential flats under permitted development rights, I believe in 2020. And it should also bear in mind that the application site itself benefits from extant plan permission in 2022. That's for the permission for 2 one-bedroom flats and parking area. These are just some images of the site area itself. So just a lot of shrubbery, some trees, quite overgrown. And it's located accessed through the car park of the Tollbar House. These are just more images of the site as well. So just note like the car park, it's not marked out. There's bins to the rear. People just sort of park where they want. There's no like formal lining. And then these are some images from 8 Latham Avenue. So these are from one of the objectors. So sort of note that their rear boundary is quite filled with trees. They've got an outbuilding at the back as well, a small one. And there's about a 26-metre rear-to-rear separation distance between the rear of this property and then the application site. This is just the sort of approved layout from the 2022 application for the 2 one-bedroom flats, the parking area, the amenity space, bin storage, cycle storage, etc. So just sort of note the residential character of the site, and just note the general features of the layout when compared to the proposed. So this is the proposed site plan. So again, very similar. You've got your 6 spaces, like hard surface into the front, your amenity areas, and you can sort of note down in like the red outline, that's the approved layout as it is, and then the white block is the proposed layout. So very sort of similar in footprint. I'm pretty sure it's 11 square meters larger and just located a bit more south, but in this instance, it allows for 2 separate amenity areas instead of 1 that was previously on the application. These are proposed plans. So instead of 2 one-bed flats, it's 2 semi-detached dwelling houses. So dining, living space on the ground floor, then bedrooms and bathroom on the first floor, sorry. And then the rear elevation this time, there's a bit more glazing. So last time there's no glazing. This time there's glazing on the first floor, but it's been mainly obscure glazed. Side elevations remain blanked. These are to allow for the growth of vegetation, so sort of a semi-formal green wall. And then the front elevation, very similar to the already approved, quite standard residential character with a hipped roof, etc. And then it's just a very indicative sort of overlay of how the site would sort of fit in with the surrounding area. So it's just important to bear in mind the separation distances from number 8. So the middle parcel, the middle house there, it's 26-metre separation distance. The rear windows in the back, as said, they've been obscure glazed, and then the habitable rooms have been obscure glazed to 1.5 metres above the finished floor level. That's all to be secured by condition with details of the opening mechanism. So it's a right opening only, so to avoid any oversight onto the gardens of Shrewsbury Court. So that's just where the garages are to the immediate east. And then the final matter was regarding highway safety. So it was sort of raised that this proposal would increase the intensification and sort of trigger the need for like widening access. So it was sort of requested that trip generation was put forward, but we're of the view that the intensification is not adverse enough to warrant or trigger that need. Parking layout it meets the council's parking standards. All the parking's on plot. So we're of the view that there'd be no adverse impacts to the parking for Tollbar House and onto the wider highway network. We've sort of bared a large amount of weight on the fallback positions of the 2022 extant permission, where these impacts weren't raised. So it's important to sort of compare what's previously been approved now and then what's proposed. And then, yeah, that's everything. Back to you, Chair.
Thank you, Connor. Okay, committee, we have 3 people registered to speak. Unfortunately, however, Mr. Carpenter, who was registered to speak as an objector, is now unable to be present today and therefore will not be speaking at this meeting. Please, therefore, can I call the Parish Councillor, Jonathan Orchard, and Ward Councillor Heather Skibstead to address committee. Okay. Good afternoon, obviously, councillors. You have 10 minutes in this case between you to address committee. And when you finish, remain in your seats, please. There may be some questions. Obviously, Democratic Services will let you know when you've got 30 seconds left. So when you're ready. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. I shall be speaking first as Ward Councillor. I'm also Parish Councillor, but I'm speaking together with my colleague from the Parish Council, Jonathan Orchard. There are several reasons for this objection which we will outline to the committee. I was contacted by the residents of 8 Latham Avenue who are very concerned about this application and how it will affect the privacy of their property. They have lived on that street for many years and enjoyed an unoverlooked garden. They're very concerned that although the previous planning application was approved, the developer has now come back for something bigger and more intrusive. It is a fact that the distance between the house and the planned development is permitted according to the rules. But these rules also apply when creating new developments, which we know build houses much closer together nowadays, and people who buy them are aware of this. In this case, we're looking at a street where many of the residents have lived for many years and enjoyed unoverlooked privacy. The report mentions the condition of glazed windows on the first floor bedrooms up to a height of 1.5 metres. But even with this condition, it still feels to the residents as though they would be living in a goldfish bowl, to use their words. The development would tower up behind several gardens overlooking other properties on Latham Avenue. Yes, the resident was going to speak more about that, but as I say, he's not here today. As well as this issue of lack of privacy, there is the fact that this location is not an ideal place for this development. In respect of LP 17, which states that the application should not cause an unacceptable loss of privacy, public and or private green space or natural daylight, be overbearing or cause noise or other disturbances, odour or other pollution, fail to minimise opportunities for crime and disorder. LP 17B states that proposals for new residential developments should be designed and located to ensure they provide for the needs of the future residents. This proposed development is right next door to a facility for vulnerable adults. Tolbar House is the name of it. Many of these residents are neurodivergent and have mental health issues. This could cause problems in the future. I've personally experienced an issue on behalf of the resident from 8 Latham Avenue concerning one of the residents from Tolbar House who was distressed by a very small amount of noise and other people nearby and became verbally aggressive. The possibility of this problem reoccurring is likely to increase even though staff do their very best to manage such issues with what is likely to be 2 families moving into these properties and using the area around them on a daily basis. The Tolbar House amenity will be affected, or the area around it, by the amount of people moving into 2 3-bedroomed houses, which could be possibly 5 people for each house. This will become shared access, which is not ideal in the circumstances. The previous application for which consent was given would have resulted in fewer people and in all likelihood not consist of families or children or as many cars. The area outside of Tolbar House and around the proposed development will be very restricted in terms of the amount of people using this space, and it will include residents of Tolbar House, the staff of Tolbar House, and the new occupiers of the proposed building and the cars accessing the area. If members had visited the site, they would have seen how close the buildings are to one another and the very restricted access for cars entering and leaving this shared amenity area. This proposal, in my view, constitutes an overdevelopment of this area and coupled with highway issues, which are also of serious concern and will be explained in due course, I object to this proposed development. Thank you, Chair.
Good afternoon. I'm Jonathan Orchard, Councillor for Orton Longville Parish Council. Firstly, I should like to endorse everything that Councillor Skipstead has said regarding privacy, etc. But as she indicated, I wish to focus on the highways aspects of the application. I understand the highways officer will be speaking on the matter, but I wish to emphasise the concerns of the parish council with regard to parking arrangements, vehicle movements and access to and from Shrewsbury Avenue. The committee report states that an increase of 2 vehicles compared to the proposal for the 2 flats can quote, be easily accommodated within the site boundary. However, the highways response states that the proposed parking layout appears extremely tight and would result in vehicles using their neighbour's driveway to enable turning. We agree with that view and believe that the proposal would be likely to result in parking problems which could spill over into the Toll Bar House car park. The committee report suggests a potential extra 4 vehicle movements. However, as Councillor Skipstead has pointed out, as the proposal is for 3-bedroom houses, 3-bed houses, 2 3-bedroom houses, which are likely to be occupied by families, there could be significantly more than that. The Highways report states that with an intensification of traffic movements, they would expect to see improvements to the vehicular access to accommodate two-way vehicle movements. The existing access is very narrow and has poor visibility, particularly on exiting the site onto Shrewsbury Avenue. We believe the proposal would result in an unacceptable increase in risk to pedestrians and vehicles using Shrewsbury Avenue and accessing the car park to Toll Bar House. Finally, with respect to the other matters mentioned in our objection to the proposal, rights of way, open spaces and archaeology, we accept that these can be dealt with via the proposed conditions. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Members, any questions, please? Or Heather, sorry, Councillor Skipstead, or Mr. Orchard? No. No questions. Okay. Thank you very much. I've got one. You mentioned, Councillor Skipstead, and obviously also Mr. Orchard, Councillor Orchard, about privacy. That came up a few times. But the application is for obscure windows for 1.5 metres. I must admit that sounds horrible to me. Anyway, they're obscured windows. But so I wonder how you sort of respond to that, because effectively, with that, there won't be a privacy issue if the windows only open in a certain direction and they're obscured for 1.5 metres. I wondered how strong a case you have against privacy, like overlooking, which is what you mentioned as well.
Yeah, I did mention that the residents are aware of that condition, but they still feel that it would be an overlooking, it would feel overlooked. 1.5 doesn't necessarily cover all people who might be taller than that, can look over the top. And if perhaps, I know it's a condition, but it could easily be changed later on if somebody moved in and decided to have a different window. I know it's a condition, but you know, it seems like it's still leaning over the garden. It's still towering up over the garden, and it's just the frosted window between them and people in the upstairs room. It's also very unusual to have frosted windows in a bedroom. I'm not sure how that would be tolerated sort of in the future. But anyway, that's how the residents feel about that. They still feel it's an intrusion of their privacy. It also overlooks several other gardens. It also, it's not just 8 Latham Avenue. There's other gardens it will impact on as well. Thank you.
Yeah. Obviously, you were talking about the number 8, etc., and those ones. What about those? Say, is it Shrewsbury Court, the concrete block buildings to the what I would call to the right? Have they mentioned anything? Any residents in there?
No.
No, there hasn't been any other. There haven't been any. I don't think the overlooking would be the same for them. But we haven't received any objections from Shrewsbury Court. No.
Thank you. Any other questions, please? Councillor Rush.
You mentioned the car parking. There's going to be four car parking spaces. Do you think that's enough car parking spaces for 2 houses?
Well, as the Highways report said, it may be enough spaces, but the positioning of this and the layout of the spaces means that actually manoeuvring cars into and out of those spaces could well be an issue. And to access the development, it's going to need the removal of at least one or possibly two car parking spaces from the existing car park of Tollbar House. So effectively, the access to this development is through the existing car park. So overall, I believe it could easily lead to issues with parking, and people would be able to, not so much the actual number of spaces, but actually be able to get into and out of the spaces.
Can I?
Yeah, just off again.
I also add, obviously, there'd be also visitor cars coming in and out as well. So it is a tight space, and the car park is used by the staff. It's quite full up usually. So it's already quite a sort of busy area. You've got maybe the 4 parking spaces for the families, and the fact that and the visitors coming as well on top of that.
Okay, thank you. Anybody else? Any questions? Okay, thank you very much, councillors. Turn it off. Okay, we'll go to questions for officers for any clarity. I've got one, but anybody else got anything? Councillor Rush.
Questions for the highways officer. Keep her busy. It was mentioned that to access the site, it's got to go over 2 car parking spaces of Tollgate. Is it Tollgate House? Is that correct, or is that private property where they access the site, or is it open amenity?
Thank you, Chair, and through you. It's my understanding that the car park belongs to Tollbar House itself. It is likely that parking within that car park would be affected by the access road going through, which is one of the reasons that we'd asked for a plan of the car park for Tollbar House itself as part of the comments we'd made on the application, so that we could ensure that there was still adequate parking retained for that, as well as the requirements to access and park for the new dwellings.
Do highways still object to the planning application on because of the highways issue?
Yes, we haven't received any additional information to address the highways objections.
Councillor Sherrill.
Thank you, Chair. I'll follow on from that then. It might be worth asking, in light of what Highways have just said, Connor's recommended this for approval still, so I'd be interested to know the answer to that. So the planning officer must be satisfied that either it can be resolved, we've been here before if you remember, at some point, or it's conditioned that it has to be. That's point 1, but you can come back. That's not the question I was going to ask though. It was just fleshing out your point, Chair, about objections. I note that there are 5 in total, but 4 of them are from the same address. So in effect, and I'm assuming they're all the same objection. So I don't know whether the 5th one is the same or on a different subject, but am I reading that correct?
Correct. Oh, sorry, yeah, you're correct. I'm pretty sure it was one of the neighbours, number 7 or number 9, and I think their objection more centred around retaining the public right of way, and that's been confirmed. It's been retained, so there's no concern there.
Fine. So, but the other 4 are basically the same objection.
They're all from number 8, yes, and they just sort of talk about the privacy overlooking concerns.
I only ask because the chair tried to flesh out the level of objection in the surrounding properties. It seems that there are none other than 2 in effect. Okay, fine. Thank you. Ooh, has it gone off? No.
Councillor Antin, then yeah.
Thank you, Chair. My question's also to Highways. looking at the application, you mentioned on section E, page 8, conditions are recommended relating to parking, turning circles, cycle parking, temporary facilities, clear of right of way, and lighting. The question is, have those been satisfied to your satisfaction? Secondly, that the parking, to echo my fellow councillors' questions, the parking bays adjacent the fence line would appear that you could only manoeuvre into those if you drive in to the car parking area. You can only reverse into those spaces, which means that you would be reversing out of that parking area into the other parking area. Would that cause any concerns? So those are the two questions. Thank you, Chair.
Okay. In terms of the conditions, the Highway Authority hadn't recommended any conditions because we were objecting to the application. So those conditions have been written by planning. In terms of vehicles reversing into or out of the parking area for those houses, yes, that would be a concern because that would involve reversing across the public right of way.
Councillor Mahmood.
Thank you, Chair. Through you, I just wanted officers to clarify that, just going back on Councillor Skipsed's comment about LP17, so I just want officers to clarify whether this proposal is contrary to LP17 as outlined by Councillor Skipsed.
Yeah, thank you, Councillor, for you, Chair. So we essentially took the view that although there were some impacts identified from overlooking loss of privacy as outlined in the objections, we sort of took the view that given the more than adequate separation distance of 26 metres, just for bear in mind that national guidance is around, well, not guidance, informalised guidance is 21 metres, so it's above and beyond that. There's also the obstacle glazing to the rear, so there's four rooms essentially in the rear. 2 are 7 bathrooms and they're fully obstacle glazed, and then the other 2 are bedrooms. So these are secondary bedrooms where the obstacle glazing is up to 1.5 metres from the floor level, with the rest being just clear glaze essentially. And this, although would be a degree of overlooking, officers do not they wouldn't say it was adverse enough to sort of result in unacceptable living arrangements for especially number 8 in question. The other 2 neighbours, they're plus 30 metres rear to rear, so that was more than ample in our opinion. And then in terms of the opening mechanisms, it'd be sort of right hinge opening. Shrewsbury Court is mainly the dwelling right to the west, but they would, because of the way it opens and the obstacle glazing and sort of orientation of the site in general, there would be no adverse impact onto the neighbour amenity. And then the council also mentioned about future occupier amenity, that's LP17B, and they met every point. There's cycle storage, there's bin storage, there's ample amenity space, so there's sort of no reasons why, from the future occupiers' need, there to be a reason for refusal as well.
Yeah, through you, Chair, if I could just make another comment following on from what Connor said there. In a suburban context like this, it would be unreasonable to expect there to be absolutely no intervisibility between adjacent properties. So whilst there will be a degree of intervisibility over and above what there is now, as Connor has explained, by virtue of the separation distances, which are well beyond the 21 metres that we use as a rule of thumb in suburban areas, and also the fact that if you look at the plan, you'll see that the rear elevation does not directly face any of these properties. It's at an angle. Okay, it looks over the gardens or faces the gardens, but it doesn't directly look elevation to elevation towards the windows of any of these properties. In terms of overbearing impact, which I think was one of the concerns that were raised with the referral to committee, it's important to bear in mind that there is an extant permission that's shown here with the dashed red line for a similar scale 2-storey building, which would be 2 1-bedroom flats, which would be closer to the rear boundary, so would have more of an impact in that sense than the proposal. So, which was deemed not to be unacceptable in terms of an overbearing impact. So it would be unreasonable to refuse this one on the grounds of an overbearing impact when it's less than what's already been approved. And also, just again, repeating really what Connor said, any degree of overlooking is further mitigated by obscure glazing and the way that the windows can open, which reduces any degree of overlooking to very minimal. Thank you, Chair.
No, you can't. Councillor Skibb said, no, we don't do that. Sorry. Right. Councillor Rush.
Sorry to go back to car park, transport. Access to the site. Is there an agreement in place with the owners of Toll Bar House to take away 2 car parking spaces or whatever many car parking spaces to gain access into the site?
Through you, Chair. That's not something that we'd be aware of as part of the application. It would be something for the applicants to have resolved.
Okay. Councillor Fitzgerald.
Thank you, Chair. I've found the words I was looking for, but maybe Connor can expand on it. Because it's very odd when we sit here and we hear one officer say no objection, yet the other officer says, no, we're approving it. So I'm assuming you're approving it on the notwithstanding the concerns of the Local Highways Authority, the proposal is considered to be in accordance with policy LP 13 of the Peterborough Local Plan 2019. Could you just, because again, this is the subjective issue. We're back to subjectivity, that it's your view, Connor, that it won't impact or the concerns are mitigated, because you recommended approval, but quite clearly highways are objecting. Now, could you just explain in a little bit more detail why that is?
Thank you, Councillor, for you, Chair. I guess the biggest sort of argument in this case is the fallback position, as we mentioned, so the 2022 permission. So the parking layout was very similar. Again, 6 spaces, the same access, and because of that, that's sort of it carries a lot of weight in this decision process. So there's like various case law on how much weight you apply to the fallback position, and in this instance, we've put a large weight on it. The 2022 permission, there are no sort of concerns about highways, had no objection to start with back then. There was no sort of request for further information. They were happy with the access widths and they're happy with the sort of parking and turning aspect. Albeit there might be a few issues given the site context. The sort of principle of development's already been accepted. The sort of layout's already been accepted. And I guess the sort of site access, again, in principle, has sort of been accepted already. I think, as it was sort of mentioned earlier, about the number of spaces or the number of occupants on this sort of dwelling house. So again, it was two 1-beds were permitted before, and I think there were still 6 spaces provided. And now there's it's a 3-bed, so essentially going by the parking standards, it's two spaces per dwelling house. So that's 4, and they've additionally provided 2 visitor parking spaces as well. So they've sort of gone above and beyond the local requirements for parking. And again, given the context, it's noted that the site is sort of constrained by the single access point into the site. The visibility into Toll Bar House is sort of obscured already, but that's because of, I guess, the existing tree on the outside, and then the sort of signage for getting into Toll Bar House. But again, that's existing already. There's not really much to do about that already. And then I guess the awkward bit is the prior approval was already granted in 2020. From office to a residential use, so we sort of have no control over that. It was acceptable. It met all the criteria in the development permit development rights. So that's sort of out of our control, how they could sort of change from one use to another. So that's sort of our position. So we did I guess in the grand scheme, we sort of took highways views. We weighed it up against the benefits proposal. So like increasing the provisional housing, it was deemed acceptable last time. And we sort of came to a balanced view that it was acceptable. We could permit it, and there would be no adverse impacts in sort of highway safety. So it's essentially, like we said earlier, four extra movements a day from this proposal, and we sort of took the view that it wouldn't be adverse enough to warrant, I guess, highway safety concerns, further issues, etc. Thank you.
Okay, Chair, just as a follow-up to that, thank you very much. That explains it perfectly, thank you. I don't think that's captured in the report in that way, which gives you the background as to why there's conflict. My follow-up question is, and forgive me if I've missed them, but I have scanned through them. Conditions are recommended relating to parking, turning facilities, cycle parking, temporary facilities, clear right-of-way and lighting. Can you point me to that condition, or was that option not taken up? Because I've scanned through them and it's not that clear to me.
Could you just repeat the question again? Sorry.
Conditions are recommended relating to parking, turning facilities, cycle parking, temporary facilities, clear right-of-way and lighting.
Mm-hmm.
Now, that's a recommendation within the report. I don't know who it's from, whether it's you or Highways.
Yeah.
So is that encapsulated in the conditions? Because I scanned through them, I couldn't.
Yeah. So all those issues, they were sort of, I guess, they were on the permitted development of the approval from the 2022 application. So we
so it relates
took them over and just sort of carried them across.
I understand.
Yeah.
It's okay. Thank you.
Okay. Anybody else? Got a bit of a question. I'm playing devil's advocate a bit. If the separation distance is within the regulations, the allowable distance, why are we going down the line of obscuring windows? Just trying to get, because one minute it's within, and the next minute, but we're obscuring vision. Why are we doing that?
I guess the reason for this is, well, it's noted that the proposed development will be quite close to the rear boundary of the site, and then it'd be sort of on the border between number 8 Latham Avenue and the development site itself. And I guess in the instance of just sort of taking the matters into our assessment, it was beneficial for the surrounding neighbours for the optical glazing. The question was posed to the applicant, and they were more than happy to collaborate and sort of anything to get the development move forward. So in that instance, we thought it was reasonable to sort of put the condition on. And it's more in the matter for the impact on Shrewsbury Court as well to the east. So it just sort of worked out for the benefit of everyone. And it was sort of mentioned in the previous report on the 2022 that there could be a sense of overlooking from windows. So we sort of take that assessment and make sure we sort of cover the previous concerns raised. So if we sort of allowed rear windows with no glazing, it would sort of we'd sort of contradict ourselves from what we said on the 2022 commission. So it's just about being consistent for our decision making process.
Question for Highways. Did that come on?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Can you just clarify what the difference is then between the 2022 extant permission from the point of view of getting in and out of the site that sort of vexes you so much now with this application?
Bearing in mind it's a subjective view, she's a different planning officer.
Thank you, Chair. To give you a bit of context for this application, the site access is substandard for a shared use. It's potentially substandard for a single dwelling, to be honest, but it is the access that was permitted at the time that the offices were consented. The prior approval to convert the offices into 10 flats would have reduced the amount of traffic using that substandard access, and the view for the 2 single bed dwellings, which at the time of that application, this area of land was shown as overflow car parking for Tollbar House. So the view was taken that 2 flats of 2 one-bed dwellings would generate less traffic than could be accommodated by the overflow car parking area. So this would also not take the traffic generation over the level that would have been generated by the offices. In terms of the current application, we've requested the applicant do an assessment to demonstrate again that they are not taking the traffic generation over and above what would have been previously using the access, because it's only at the point that they take it over that and make it an intensification of use of a substandard access that we get into the realms of recommendations of refusal or requiring access improvements. At this point, nothing has been provided to demonstrate that, so we can only take the view that they've not demonstrated it won't intensify the use of a substandard access, which is why you've got an objection from Highways, because 2 3-bed dwellings will generate more traffic than the 2 1-beds that were previously consented.
So Connor, based on that answer, can you sort of like explain to me and certainly committee why you don't think we should wait for that information?
Thank you, Chair. Again, just sort of echoing our viewpoints earlier, we sort of weighed a lot of weight on the extant permission and the fallback position in that case, where the written information wasn't required. And we just took the view that although there would be a slight increase, we're of the view that when considering like the development plan as a whole, the impacts wouldn't be adverse enough to sort of warrant any major concerns. And that's pretty simply. We don't think the increase from the existing proposed developments would be adversely impactful and harmful to the surrounding area. Given that the site access is existing, as Sarah said, it's inadequate and substandard, and we just weren't of the view that the intensification would be adverse enough to result in any harm.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Through just to add to that, so the extant permission was for 2 1-bed flats, and this application is for 2 3-bedroom dwellings. I don't think we shouldn't make an assumption that a 1-bedroom flat is only going to have one person living there. You could quite easily have a couple living there who might have 2 cars. Yeah. Equally, in a 3-bedroom house, you might have a single person there. So it's not a given that because the house is a lot bigger, that there will automatically be more traffic. I suppose if you did statistically looked into this over every dwelling in the country, there'll be obviously a pattern that more people live in bigger houses. But I don't think you can always make that assumption. And I think our view is that because of the extant permission and the fallback position, any additional traffic generated by this development is likely to be fairly minimal. And on the scale of things, as Connor said, you might have 3 or 4 additional journeys per day, which on the scale of things is very low. So we took the view that it's not a tipping point which is going to turn it from acceptable to fundamentally unsafe or unacceptable. That was the thinking behind our assessment.
Any questions for officers? No. Okay. Who wants to open debate then? Councillor Fitzgerald.
I'll jump in straight away then. I'm persuaded by the officers. I think they've got it right on the basis that I don't know whether both officers were involved in the previous application, but I'll use the word again. It's a subjective view of different officers about policy and interpretation. And I think Connor's right in the sense, and Phil, that it wouldn't be any worse than what was previously acceptable in an already substandard access. So you can't make improvements unless you start getting into major policy issues. So if it's compliant and the planning officer's view is compliant, which is why I asked that question, we could think about conditioning it for this report to appear. But again, I think listening to Connor and to Phil, the mitigation that they provided in terms of their concerns about the overall impact will be minimal in terms of what is being proposed now and what's already accepted. So I'll be supporting the officer's recommendation to approve this on this occasion because I think it complies with policy.
Okay. Councillor Mahmood.
Thank you, Chair. Through you, yeah, I'm of the similar view as Councillor Fitzgerald. I think for me, the other thing as well is the previous application, which has been permitted in 2023 with the one-bedroom flat. And I'm satisfied with the responses that the officers have given me. I think, on contrary, I think they have considered all the mitigation in this case. And yeah, it doesn't, necessarily it doesn't mean that, bigger houses mean more people. So yeah, in that view, I think so far, I think I'm going to be with officer recommendations.
Okay. Yes. Sorry, Councillor Warren.
I'm kind of going to share the same views as that, but obviously when I was looking at this application, I was looking at amenity, the close proximity, the overlooking of this property and what it is, and how this scape and the scale of this property is going to affect the actual property on number 8, Lytham Way is. And I'm obviously quite happy with what they said about the officers, that there is no going to be overlooking. There is no going to be no real adverse impact. I think there will be some impact on number 8, but not adverse enough for me to say to refuse this application on that grounds. Then obviously we had the highways, which is a big contentious kind of point. And from what Connor and I've heard what highways have said, I'm happy enough on balance. I don't think I'm absolutely totally satisfied with the highways and the highway situation, with the access point and this substandard access point, but I'm enough to actually say on balance to accept the officer's recommendation and grant this application.
Thank you, Councillor Warren. Councillor Rush.
Thank you, Chair. I think the previous application that was granted comes into play here. Access was acceptable then. I can't see any reason why it shouldn't be acceptable now. Officers have done a good job I think, with the glass the glass upstairs not overlooking the gardens. I think it'll enhance the areas when we went down there and see this overgrown, roughed area, patch of land, and I think it'll enhance that area. So I will be going with officer's recommendation. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Rush. Councillor Antin. Yes.
Thank you, Chair. The only issue to echo fellow councillors' points is the access and highways recommendations or conditions are recommended. Looking at the plans, I still have a concern that what is shown there isn't likely to work. You can see pictures of the cars in scale next to the development. Now, I know that was granted previously for one bedroom. Now, I do feel not all of those spaces will work. I would support the application if the conditions that highways require in terms of turning circles, etc., can be satisfied to highways. Is that not going to be applied as a condition? If that was applied as a condition, I would be happy to recommend acceptance. Thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Okay. Anybody else? No? Right, okay, fair enough. Just from my point of view, I think Councillor Rush is correct. There is extant, and there is also the issue of getting in and out of this site was accepted before, so you really couldn't oppose that now unless you could prove there was a lot more cars and Well, it may well be a few, I accept that, but it's not a big increase. Councillor Anton's spot on, really. They are tight. Those parking will be tight, and with SUVs like they are now, again, we can't tell what cars are going in there. Could be a DPD van overnight. You don't know who's working wherever, so it is a tight one. And I get that as well. The obscure windows, I have to say, I'm not in favour of that at all. I think that I wouldn't want to buy that house. But that's nothing to do with planning. I just think you're in the rules or you're not in the rules. And if you're not in the rules, you put the windows up. If you're in the rules, you don't put the windows up. But that's what's been agreed between the developer and officers. So fine, that's fair enough. That's in the condition. Again, objections from one, and they are, we've disappeared. They are, extremely relevant worries about overlooking. But again, I've noticed that along that boundary, and if you'd have visited, you'd have seen it. There are a lot of trees that have been planted along that boundary that are fairly young at the moment. There's some older ones that are getting quite established. So all in all, I don't think, with the extent, I don't think it would be reasonable to refuse. It certainly we can't, I couldn't refuse it on the basis of overlooking because that's been addressed, even though I don't think it needed to be so much. And the parking, I always understand your point totally, but unfortunately the extent is there, so it's going to be difficult to suddenly change the rules. Although I would encourage officers in the future to get these things resolved, and we need to get those reports, and it doesn't look good from a council, from a planning point of view, if we're overruling officers when we haven't actually got the information. It's different if it was their opinion. So anyway, other than that, I think I'm edging on the side of going with officers' recommendation. Anybody else? Councillor Fitzgerald.
Just one point, Chair, might be useful. Condition 8, I think, largely deals with Councillor Antunes' concerns regarding parking, bins, safety. I think it's all covered in Condition 8, just by the way.
Okay, I think the problem is the picture we've got there. Those are very small gaps. Those are very parking spaces. But I understand. I totally understand your point. Anybody else want to come in on the debate? No. So bearing that in mind, then do I have a proposal for this application? Councillor Mahmood.
Thank you, Chair. And through you, I propose that we go with officer recommendations and grant approval subject to the conditions cited by the officer.
And a seconder, please. Councillor Warren. Okay, so you've got a proposal and it's been seconded, so we'll go to the vote. All those in favour of Councillor Mahmood's proposal?
10, that's unanimous.
So that's a unanimous decision and the application is approved. Thank you. Are we all okay to continue? Maybe desperate to get away for a toilet break, wouldn't you? Toilet break? Yeah, okay. Can we do 5 past then? Don't forget, well, we're not in live session now, so you can talk freely, but obviously we'll see you in 10 minutes. Welcome back, everybody. We're now back. Item 6 now is the quarterly reports, 1st of April to the 30th of September, pages 47 of your agenda. I'll pass over to Phil Moore to introduce the item. When you're ready, Phil.
Thank you. Through you, Chair. So the appeals quarterly reports. This actually covers 2 quarters from dating back from April. We report this to committee just to give members some assurance of our performance in terms of the number of appeals overturned. We do have a good record. Now, this chart here shows over a 2-year rolling period that of all the appeals that we've had over the last 2 years, 30% were allowed. And that's means 70% of them were upheld, which is a good figure. Now, the government requires us, or requires councils to, of the total decisions made, for there to be no more than 10% allowed at appeal. That's of the whole decisions, approvals, refusals, everything. And as you can see with this chart, we've had 0% of major decisions overturned at appeal, and only 0.1% over the past 2 years of non-major decisions allowed at appeal. That's a very low percentage, well below the 10%. If we were to reach 10%, what that would mean is that we'd be taken into special measures. We'd have our planning function removed from us until things were put right, and we're nowhere near that. I'm pleased to say also that over the past 2 quarters, none of the appeals that were allowed were committee decisions. They were all delegated. So that's a sign of the quality of decision making of committee as well, I think. So very quickly then, in conclusion, we do have a good record, as I've said, but there's always lessons to learn from appeals. And the key lessons, I think, that we can be extracted from the appeals that we've had over the last 6 months. Firstly, amenity. There's a general trend, I think, with appeal decisions where inspectors are taking a looser view of amenity. I'm talking about things like overlooking, overbearing impact, loss of light, that kind of thing, where in the past, perhaps a tighter line would have been taken, where things would have been deemed unacceptable, which now are deemed acceptable. It's a general trend, I think. Obviously, inspectors are appointed by the government, so we can see that as the government's view, this slight relaxation. It doesn't mean to say that anything goes, but it's just a general trend that needs to be noted, I think. One of the key lessons that came out of the 2 recent appeals, one of which was appended to the report, was around the issue of self-build. And what came out of that was that our local plan, policy LP9, I believe it is, on self-build, there is a line in there that says developments with self/custom build will be viewed more favourably. Now, it's been established in a number of appeals that what that doesn't mean is that you can build self-build anywhere. It still has to be within the limitations of the spatial strategy. So we've had appeals where the appellant has tried to argue, well, I can build this house in a place where normally I wouldn't be allowed to build, outside village envelopes or in the open countryside, because your policy says it'll be viewed more favourably. So it's been well established from these appeals. No, that's not the case. You still have to be within, places where the local plan says you can build. Also, 5-year land supply, a recent decision where the 5-year land supply, whether or not we had a 5-year land supply, was contested. the inspector came to the conclusion that at that time we couldn't demonstrate a 5-year land supply. It was something between 3 and 4.5 years. So that was established at a fairly recent appeal. That won't carry on forever, but it was the position at that time and remains so today. So those are the key lessons and conclusions from the appeals report. Back to you, Chairman.
Thank you, Phil. Any questions? Yeah, Councillor Moon? No, I thought you said yes.
Sorry, not a question. It was just going to be a comment, really.
Okay.
From me, I think I note the report. I think it's fantastic to be well below the 30%, and I just on record wanted to thank the officers for making keeping within that that 10%. And I think as a committee, we are probably doing something right to be at that 0 decisions appeal that have been decided by committee. So yeah, I think it's really good, and I think sometimes we get some really challenging applications at committee. So yeah, good on everyone. And that's all I just like to say.
Thank you, Councillor Fitzgerald. I saw your hand up.
Sorry, I just wondered, Bill, you said we still today could not demonstrate a 5-year land supply. Is that what you just said?
As far as I'm aware,
Oh, that's fine.
I'm not aware that it's been challenged and successfully.
Okay. That's fine. That's fine. Okay, thanks.
Anybody else? No. You got something else to add? No, I didn't know if you were going to say something else. Then. No. No, I think the figures speak for themselves, really. I think where committee makes decisions, I think they are sometimes or regularly more subjective and on balance. I think that's why committee tend to be called to make a decision. So we are more liable to, and I have no doubt we will lose one from time to time because we've thought one way and inspector thinks the other. But it's not, what we mustn't be or try not to be caught out with is where they say we've been unreasonable. And that's where if we've not taken into account information, if we've not made a decision on false grounds as such, where we could get costs. Having said that, as I've said to you before, and I'm sure everybody will remind you, that doesn't mean you can't make the opposite decision. If you've got the basis, the background to it, and you're confident of what you're saying, then that's what should make your decision for you. With listening to debate on that, even though an officer might say we might be liable to costs, that's an important thing for you to tell us. But you must make your decision based on what you think's right under planning, not that you might be under threat of costs. Although it's important. Yeah.
Just on that issue of 5-year land supply, that's my understanding, but we'll check whether anything has changed since then. But that was the appeal decision at that time in July that established that.
Yeah. Okay. So to get was it 0.01 of 10% is fantastic performance, and it's good to see that everybody's learning from what the inspector said to make decisions. We've lost, I know the officers have lost things before, and we learn from them, don't we? Officers. But quite right, Councillor Mahmood. I agree with you that the performance is excellent and well done. Please pass our thanks on to officers for doing a cracking job. I see it was 2% going back a few years, and now we're down to 0.0 something, which is fantastic. So well done. So thanks for that. Anybody else, or should we just close at that? Yeah, nothing else on that then. Great. Thank you very much then. Okay, that will conclude the meeting. Thank you very much for your attendance today. I'm a little disappointed with the site visits. 2 turned up, which is not really very good and certainly not doesn't help the applicants. But so I can only urge you, please, to try your best to make the visits. Other than that, have a lovely Christmas, and we'll see you in the new year for the next committee meeting. Thanks very much. Thank you, officers.